And I told you I'm not going to be able to be at the next two meetings, right?
Back.
Yes.
Recording in progress.
Okay, so we are now recording. Thank you, Klaus. That is helpful to know. Sarah, have you heard from Jen?
Yeah, she's saying she can't get on. I'll work with her.
That little Luke.
You just asked about Luke?
Yeah.
No, I was looking for my pen.
Oh, I heard a baby.
Oh, he's going to bed. Yeah.
Ah.
So you get kind of like.
Oh, that's Sarah's.
Yeah, Luke's going to bed. That was you got to see him though when you dropped that pack.
I did.
Yeah, he's doing really well.
Good.
Yeah, he's a little happy baby.
He definitely looks like he's thriving.
Yeah, he's doing well. Keeps us busy, that's for sure. In a good way.
How old is he now?
Yeah, he's 11 months old already.
Oh, wow.
Oh my gosh,
That flew by, didn't it?
that did
Yeah.
fly by.
Like, unbelievable. He'll be a year old May 21st.
Oh, it's
Crazy.
a nice time of year.
Yeah, it's nice. We're already celebrating. We're already getting his birthday stuff together. And my grandmother has the same birthday.
Oh, terrific.
And they have a 95-year difference, but she'll be coming down. She'll be coming down to the birthday party too. And she's really
Okay.
with it. She's doing great.
All righty then. Jen is joining us, Jen Urena. She's our map woman.
So I will say, my computer forced me to do an update that was not a good idea. So I'm going to try the go to my PC. Otherwise, the maps will be a bit blurry on my desktop. I mean, blurry is better than nothing, but I just, I don't know. It forced me to do this update for some of the more intense maps, and the update is just not happening. So I'm going to try sharing through go to my PC first.
Okay. And I'll ask the consultants who are in the audience if you are able and you have your maps available this evening. If we run into trouble on our end, we'll ask you to share yours. I'll promote you to a panelist so that you can share your maps. So I appreciate the consultants' indulgence in that. All right, Jay, I think we are good to go.
Okay, this is the start of the September 25th meeting of the Inland Wetlands Agency of the Town of
April.
Greenwich. Of April. You know what? I wrote something else down and it was crossed my mind. The April 25th meeting of the Inland Wetlands Agency of the Town of Greenwich. And we will not be seating any alternates. Everybody is.
Actually, Klaus is seated.
Klaus?
Klaus will be seated, yes.
Ah,
So I see in attendance, Jay Schondorf, Robert Rimmer, Peter Linderoth, Norma Curlin, and Klaus Yonder. So we are short regular members, and so then Klaus will be seated,
thank you.
certainly.
Okay, we have a review and approval of the draft minutes of March the 28th and April 7th. Does anyone have any comments on either of those? If not, would someone make a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Any opposition?
No opposition, but I should abstain from the meeting minutes from last month because I wasn't at that meeting.
Okay. That was the March 28th.
Yeah.
Okay.
The director's report, Ty?
Director's report. So if you recall, last month we had to bid farewell to Bob, which was major. And I'll tell you, there's not a day that goes by when I'm on the counter on the phone where somebody's not saying, oh, what a loss to the agency, what a loss to the agency. How lucky is Stanford? So all of it very true. But the winds of change did not die down. Doreen took another position within the land use agency. She is now our applications coordinator. I know, another major loss for us. Jen, who is our assistant wetlands compliance officer, is taking on part of Doreen's duties. Doreen, of course, being in the same office, she's
Mhm.
helping out too.
Yeah.
And I'm so pleased with the staff as a whole. Conservation staff, wetland staff, administrative staff, everybody is just buckling down and just doing, prioritizing and doing what needs to be done, for which I am entirely grateful. So that's, you see, Jen and Sarah will be taking a stronger role this evening and for the foreseeable future, while we work to get our positions filled.
Okay. So now we will proceed to the applications.
Yes, under
Um,
consent approvals, we've got 2022-29. And I would recommend to the agency that we also bump up 71 Ridgeview Avenue, which is number 2, under your applications ready for review. Today, they brought in maps which greatly minimized the extent of the activities. And if this activity had been a standalone from the beginning, it probably would have been agent approval. So unless there's somebody in the audience, we did have one neighbor check in, and I just want to make sure we don't shortcut her. So if there's somebody from the audience for Ridgeview, if you can raise your hand. Okay, so with that, Jay, I don't see any objection from the audience to bring this up to consent approval. So if it works for the agency, that would be my recommendation.
How do we work on that? Just ask for approval?
Yeah, so somebody can just make a motion to move 2022-024 to the consent approvals.
I'll move.
Thank you, Klaus.
Second.
Thank you, Peter. Any objections? Okay, so now there's 2 items on the consent, up for consent approval.
Okay. Now our new applications for review.
We still need to move to approve the 2 consent items.
Oh, I
That
thought-
last motion was just to move the
ah,
one up.
So moved.
Thank you, Norma.
Second,
Thank you, Rob. Bob,
Bob is right.
any objections? Okay, that one carries too. New applications ready for review.
and new applications for review, 2022-022 300 Stanwich Road. Fabio Silvagni for corrective action for unauthorized installation of retaining walls 2 feet from wetlands.
I'm gonna excuse myself from this. He's my neighbor and I got notice of what's going on, so I think I should just sort of,
Okay, so I will move
it.
you over to the, I'm gonna move you to our attendees. Here are. There we go. Okay, we'll go back and grab you, Klaus. Thank you. Okay, Jen?
All right, so I'm going to, if you want to do share screen, I have it open on Go to My PC, so I hope
Ah.
that's successful.
Yep, hang on. Let me make you co-host. Okay, Jen, you should be able to share your screen.
Is that good for
great.
everyone?
Yeah.
Perfect. Okay, so it's working. Let's
Yay.
keep this going. Okay, this violation was found during the bond release inspection for a previous permit issued for a deck and concrete slab. There had previously been a low rubble wall along the edge of the lawn in the area east of the driveway bump out. The new wall was relocated closer to the wetland. The removal of 10 trees was authorized in May 2021 in the general area, but the replacement evergreens proposed have not been completed. We had a few questions for the applicant. Some of the questions were how the fill would be stabilized, what erosion controls would be in place, but these are new revised plans I just received today, so that was answered for me. The proposed walls should be constructed in dry laid stone And the restoration plantings should consist of native trees and woody vegetations. The applicant should also confirm and if any grading is proposed on the west side of the stone wall. And also there was a question about the impervious coverage with the increase from the last permit for the deck and concrete slab. I believe that, and Doreen actually wrote this staff report, had believed that the 1,000 square foot increase would be exceeded with the new wall proposed. There were some questions on that, and the applicant should be on tonight.
Okay. Let me see. All right. Mr. Silvani, you can unmute yourself.
I am unmuted and you guys can see me.
Correct.
All right, good deal. Thank you everyone for having me, and apologies for all these violations and things that I'm trying to rectify. So I heard what was 2 seconds ago in terms of the impervious surface. I've been communicating with Doreen, but I think she was on vacation, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes.
Until today or so.
Yes.
We were kind of having some back and forth on the calculation of impervious surface because there used to be, like was mentioned earlier, basically some stone, like loose stones that were basically retaining the lawn for all intents and purposes, where the new proposed location of the wall is. We can have a discussion if it should be included, not included. I sent some pictures of what it looked like before. Ultimately, that's what I'm trying to restore it back to. So I think that should reduce about 150 or 250 square feet of impervious surface. But haven't been able to connect with her, obviously, to review that.
She did send me the email this morning. I don't know if it was anything after this morning, but the erosion controls on the plan, I believe, was the plan that you just sent her this morning.
Correct. Yep.
Yes.
Correct.
And then there was still a question on that increase of impervious coverage because that older wall wasn't so much a wall. It was more dry laid boulders, and this is what would be more of a mortared stone wall, if not mistaken. The proposed wall. So, that's what I'm getting out of it. Yeah.
Yeah. If it makes it easier for the panel here and you guys just want me to kind of stack a bunch of rocks and kind of return it to the original proposal, by all means, we'll just do the same thing, if that's okay.
Okay.
Yeah, can I have one quick question? The wall that was built closer to the wetland than originally approved, is that to remain?
No, so this would be a replacement. So if you look
Okay.
at
so there's no square footage to be picked up there, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm basically saying, hey, like I know this is causing like some issues, right? So that wall that you kind of see just, I'm not very good with directions, parallel to Stanwich Road, somewhat parallel. Yeah, right there, a little lower to the left. Just to the left of the wetland. Sorry, I'm terrible with coordinates. Yeah, that one right there. That one would be with just stacked stones, just like we had it before. So if that makes it easier for you guys.
Jen, does that solve the coverage issue?
It does. I think there was still some questions on the restoration plantings. It would be dried laid. That was another question. So I know you were saying if need be, you were able to do that.
Correct. And the restoration, okay. I had asked to read, like, just tell me what you guys would like, or what are some of the things that are acceptable.
We can certainly send you our preferred list. And then that big question on whether it was dry laid. And there was just one other question of how the fill would be stabilized. But I think actually, I'm not too sure.
I believe that was the fill in the backyard.
In the backyard, yep, just
then-
confirming that, okay,
Yeah, in the backyard, all that stuff is gonna be compacted,
okay,
right?
Yes.
It'll just be like machine compacted, really. Just to make sure it doesn't move. And then
okay, so we're talking on this end.
exactly right.
Okay.
Yep, exactly
Mhm.
right. And then what I'm probably also gonna try to do, and you just let me know what kind of I don't know if like, native fescue or something like that to have some roots or something so it doesn't like fall in the future, because I know that can sometimes be an issue. Whatever may work. You guys just let me know.
So Pat, conditions of approval were not given on Doreen's staff report. There was a recommendation of delay. So, a bunch of the questions were answered tonight, but I just wanted to point that out.
Okay, so if a normal course, the special conditions would be for the board members, we have several special conditions that are pretty routine. Things have got to be done by a certain date, posting a bond, how that gets posted, estimate for the planting plan. Then what we could call the special conditions would be that the stone wall has to be dry laid, that the back area will be stabilized with seed, and that a planting plan consistent with the agency's past memorandum for restoration would be submitted for approval by this agency or the staff. Is that something you feel comfortable moving on in that regard? Or
Yeah, the one other question that I had around the dry lay stones, the wall that doesn't apply to the wall in the front, right parallel to Stanwich, right? The fence that's going to go in the front of the house.
Jen?
So this applies to the 3-foot stone wall at the front of the property. There needed clarification according to Doreen, who wrote the
Yes.
staff report.
Oh,
Yeah,
yeah. So let me just sort of clarify that. What
Yeah.
I'm trying to do is the following, and I'm
I know
sure
there's
you've
a lot
seen-
of walls.
There's a lot of walls. I
Yeah.
know. It's a pretty big front. So what I'm trying to do there is do kind of like you've seen in a lot of the houses, that the bottom half of the wall is stone, and then you put a fence up on the top so that it's basically 6 foot from the grade of the road. That's what I'm trying to do. So that would not be laid. That would actually have to be mortared, right? So that it doesn't fall over.
So if the agency is comfortable, we can have a condition of approval for the stormwater drainage report by a licensed engineer, that sort of condition. I don't know how you feel about that, Pat. That's a bit different than the dry laid stone.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
So that would be converting this front wall from a dry laid to a mortared wall?
There's nothing in the front. Sorry, it's just so we're clear.
Ah.
There's nothing in the front right now that is included in the additional square footage of impervious surface that Soundview Engineering proposed, right? They laid out, and they would be the ones, they did provide to me the storage tanks that I would have to be installing as part of the drainage exemption report, which is not really exemption. So I basically have to put a bunch of tanks, and they laid out the different locations.
So
the different
that sounds like you're beyond the square footage for a stormwater exemption, and that you
Correct.
actually have to have an engineered, which is not shown here.
Yes, it's not in
Okay.
this. It's I sent a separate. There's another file attachment that basically had the 2 proposed locations of where the storage tanks would have to go. Yeah, because this goes above and beyond for the exemption to not have anything engineered and installed. It's I can tell you it's kind of they're sort of towards in the front triangle of the, if you kind of zoom in a little bit, in the front of the driveway, just down and to the right, where that green area, where that green spout is. Yep, right there. Oh, you were just kind of right there in the 4-inch outlet. A little bit down to the right. So Yeah, you can't see me pointing,
So
sorry.
you have to do a stormwater management plan.
Exactly correct.
Okay.
Yep, exactly
That
correct.
feels bigger than what we should be trying to craft in a special condition.
Yeah. So now one of the things that they asked me, and again, I stopped everything. I'm not, obviously don't have any equipment or a machine, but I'm going to have to obviously dig it out with the machine to make sure that I get to whatever feet that the engineers basically said. They have 2 proposed locations, just in case we hit a lot of ledge or a lot of issues getting down there, which there's ledge everywhere here. But I would do it all at the same time. Like I'd have basically rent all the equipment to be doing them all, like basically start to remove all the material that was in the that was already moved into or in and around the wetlands area, and then dig those 2 large holes to basically see where you're going to put the tanks.
Okay.
And those, yeah, I did submit, at least they were like sketched out drawings as well.
And I would
some-
recommend to the agency that this is in fact delayed, as Doreen had originally recommended. A stormwater management report is a bigger deal.
Now, my question to you is, how can I need to go in there with a machine and actually like dig up the holes of where they should be?
That's
or
fine.
you just, so that's okay?
That's a test hole, that's fine.
Okay.
Yep, test holes are fine.
Test holes are okay. Now, are you guys not okay with me starting to remove the material that is already in there and I have to like get it out? Like, because the machine would ultimately be used for that as well. You see,
Well, why don't we, Jay, I'll defer to you. And then if it sounds like maybe the things that, stuff that we can manage at staff level, how much is okay with testing versus what becomes a regulated activity. I don't want to take up a lot of time tonight for that.
I mean, there's been a lot of back and forth of the stone walls and now the stormwater. I'm a little confused as to what we might be approving at this point.
Agreed. So I would suggest that the agency delay action till next month. And that the applicant work with staff with regards to the needed testing and any removal of accumulated material to facilitate that testing.
yeah,
And then we'll just come back next month.
all right. I was just trying to make sure, I was just trying to rent all the equipment for a month at one shot, but it sounds like you want me to do it in sort of in two goes. Is that fair?
Yes, you have to do the soil testing, which then, I'm not sure why your engineer wouldn't be doing that, but you do the soil testing, which then is the foundation for the design of the stormwater management plan, which will be submitted for the agency to consider next month.
Okay. All right.
But
Fair enough.
and I'm comfortable with that. But at one point you mentioned coming in to do the test holes and moving some material. And Pat I'm not really uncomfortable with, as long as it's done with staff and there's some staff oversight to that.
Yes, agreed.
Okay. I'm comfortable with that, to answer your question.
Okay, so that's great, because what I was going to do is I'm just going to basically rent these pretty heavy, basically excavators, really, to start removing some of this material. So if you guys are okay with that, I'm going to start cleaning all this stuff up and getting it away from where it is right now.
Working with this agency staff in the process.
Yeah, absolutely. With Doreen, I'll make sure that she lets me know what she wants. If you guys are okay with that, I'll just work with her.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Sounds good. Any other questions or things that you guys had for me?
No.
Sounds like you're good for this evening.
Yeah, it does.
Okay.
All right.
All right. Well, thank you very much. I really appreciate it.
Sure thing. Thank you. We'll
Thank
see you
you.
next month.
We don't need a motion to delay, it just goes to delay?
Yeah, we're just continuing it to the next month. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, next one on the list is 2022-026, 29 Montgomery Lane. The Soho Group for Patricia Cornell construct a shed and retaining wall 45 feet from wetlands.
And that is Jen's as well. And who from our attendees? Let's get if whomever is representing this application, if you can raise your hand. And I also have to go Klaus back. What happened to Klaus?
Hmm.
I'm here.
You're here.
Yeah, I think so.
There he is.
I see
You
him.
think so? I bet you did. Sarah, did you go grab Klaus? No. Oh,
I'm back.
hello. You took you out. Okay. Okay, call, come back in and I'll promote you to a panelist. Okay. Now we lost Bob. Okay. All right, Jen.
Right, this one I'm a bit more familiar. I wrote this staff report. The applicant proposes to construct a 12 by 18-foot shed approximately 40 feet from the on-site wetland. The shed will be partially surrounded with a boulder retaining wall to match the grade where the topography slopes downhill. The wetland can be protected during the footing, slab, and wall installation with the proposed erosion controls. The applicant filed for a drainage exemption. Initially, there were questions whether the calculations incorporated the new coverage added in the 2019 permit, but a new drainage report was submitted, which resolves that issue. Lastly, a condition of approval for their previous agent approval from 2019 was that a linear demarcation feature be implemented to extend from this ledge outcropping to southeast of the house along the southern edge of the existing lawn. And a line of boulders was approved. However, upon inspecting the site, a low-lying boulder wall was built instead in the majority of the area here, where the demarcation was planned. There is no mortar in the wall, so it will allow water to drain through it. Space boulders should still be implemented in the remaining approved demarcation area to the western outcropping, where it's practical, and around the proposed shed. So issuance of a permit with the standard and special conditions is recommended. And I'm not sure if anyone is on tonight for this one. I didn't get a confirmation.
I am not, nobody has indicated by way of raising their hand that they are here for this.
The the authorized agent seemed completely okay when I sent the staff report, but did not say if they'd be on.
Okay. Jay, it's up to you now.
Do we have any agency comments?
Yeah, so the low-lying wall, the loose stone wall, where water can get through it. Are there any biological implications to not having the spacing of the boulders that was in the initial permit? And that would be a question I have, and I know we don't have any representation from the applicant, but how does the staff feel about that?
So I didn't have too much of an issue with the wetland area. There isn't any vernal pools there, or there's mostly Norway maple, unfortunately, over in that area. There is some invasive. I didn't have too much of an issue of it because it doesn't span the entire area there. But Pat, maybe you have a bit more to say on that one. I didn't see much of an issue when I was writing it.
Yeah, generally not. We should, with being dry laid, should be fine,
Yeah.
and it's segmented, so we should be fine.
It is. Oh yeah, it's segment. Can you just quickly? I was flip flopping between the staff report and the drawing. I think I see it on the map. You can just one more time put the cursor over it, the wall. Yeah, I see what you're saying. Plenty of other places for critters to get through, right?
Yep.
Yeah, and there is a bit of a break here as well.
Yeah, I see it.
Down here as well. So it's actually not very, very complete.
Okay, and in some respects, it's maybe a little more protective than laid out boulders. So I'm all right with it
Very true.
in that regard. So, all right, that was my only question.
No other comments? So would someone like to make a motion?
Motion to approve.
Norma?
Second,
Klaus got it.
Any opposition? Okay, seeing none, that passes 400. We're still missing Bob.
Four zero zero.
Yep. Okay. Ready to move on.
Next one is 2022-030, 15 Grosset Road. Brian and Abigail Finkel, corrective action for unauthorized tree removal adjacent to wetlands.
Sorry, my mute button. So this violation was found in this February. Approximately 9 trees were removed in the wetland buffer areas without prior authorization. At least 6 were 6 inches in diameter and 4 ranging from 12 to 24 inches in diameter. These trees were scheduled to be protected as a condition of approval in their 2020 permit. The application proposes 19 planting stations based on my recommendation. The 19 stations will include 10 native trees and 28 shrubs, all sized in accordance to mitigation guidelines. The restoration plan, along with the planting plan associated with 2020-163, will restore the canopy and better the wetland prior to cutting. The active permit already includes a demarcation for the limit of the lawn, which is here. So that was part of their past permit, but they further extended it to include the entire north property line this way here. So while this new demarcation boundary and planting stations are helpful, the newly planted area on this eastern end should be protected from damage of mowers as well. I recommend that in addition to the demarcation extending the northern property line, that the eastern property boundary plantings be included within the protected demarcation as well. So issuance of an ordinance to correct is recommended.
Okay, Bill Kenny is here. And the property owner, Mr. Finkel.
Correct.
Yeah,
Good evening.
Yes. Go ahead.
We are in agreement with Jen's recommendation for the additional demarcation boulders and are available to answer any questions that you might have.
Pat, we did receive that email, kind of short notice, but from a neighbor about
Yes,
this sizing.
Mhm.
Okay. So
Yeah,
that
Mr.
was
Hoffman is on in the audience this evening.
all right.
Jay, when you're ready, when you think the agency is done, I can.
Are there any agency questions before we move on to people from the public who might have a comment? If not, let's go to the public.
Any public who wishes to comment, if you can raise your virtual hand, Mr. Hoffman. Mr. Hoffman, you can unmute yourself and present your comments.
Great, thank you very much. We had sent an email earlier outlining our argument, and we viewed the plans. We were very appreciative of the mitigation efforts. We were obviously surprised because we had seen the original plans. We were surprised when the trees bordering our property came down. They provided a lot of shade and canopy and screening between the yards, as well as a lot of canopy for wildlife. And we think that the trees, as proposed, with the 2.5-inch caliper and the 8-foot height, will take far too long to restore the canopy to what it was, both for our personal use reasons for screening but more so for the wetlands themselves, the variance of the water table, as well as the birds and critters that lived in the trees. So we were proposing that the plan included larger trees to be planted as opposed to the ones that were proposed, so that we can restore the canopy as quickly as possible and as large as feasible. I mean, these were 100-foot, 2-foot diameter trees in some cases. So it would be, 10, 20 years before it got back to the place it was supposed to have been left to begin with. Thank you.
Pat, is there anything in our regulations or requirements that mandate certain size trees or can ask for larger trees?
Pat, you're muted, but we do have mitigation guidelines, which I follow the stations, which made it a bit more plantings that we required. When I followed that, we always go to the end, whichever end it might be, where it will require more. And they do have a proposed planting from their original permit as well, which is included on this plan. So, we did follow those guidelines, but Pat, if you have more to say on that one.
Right. Our norm is 2 to 2.5 inch caliper trees. There have been times in the case of violations where trees were removed that the agency did require replacements to be bigger. It is in the discretion of the agency in terms of what's best for the wetland. So aesthetic things associated with screening and the like, not our jurisdiction, to the extent that different size material is beneficial to restoring the wetland, that's in our jurisdiction.
Would larger, or maybe a different mix, larger trees and maybe a few less, would that be a possibility? Would that assist the wetlands, or am I looking?
I would not
at it the
advocate
wrong
for
way?
fewer trees. I think the numbers that we've got here are pretty solid for the state of the property and the issues that were created through the violation. I'll defer to Mr. Kenny with regards to the difference in size. As a landscape architect, if you go up to a 3-inch or 3.5 inch, what does that get you in terms of height? In terms of 2 years out, what's the difference between 2 and 2.5 inch caliper versus a 3 to 3.5 inch caliper? Bill, did you care to weigh in on that?
Sure, yes. So, and we have specified 2 to 3 inch, and they will be, as we have some shade canopy trees and we have some understory trees. In the canopy trees, we have 7 of those proposed with the restoration activities, and those are 2 to 3 inch caliper, which will be about 14, 15 feet tall when they're installed. The understory trees will be 8 feet when they're installed. And I would have to look up. I looked up the 2 to 3 inch caliper, what the height would be. I'd have to look up if we bumped it up to 4 inches. I could look that up pretty quickly to see. But I would expect it'll be just a couple of feet difference in height. And certainly, as a tree is bigger when it's installed, they take longer to become adjusted. And so their growth rate in the initially is slower than for a smaller tree when it's installed, which a smaller tree is more resilient to the stress of being transplanted. So over time, often you find that when you plant a smaller tree and a larger tree, that they become equivalent in height over 5 to 10 years. So
the 2 to 3 that are proposed are about 14 feet, not the 8 feet that was
That's
being
right.
talked about.
Right there, but we do have some, we have 3 that are 8 feet. Those are,
Yeah.
we had a mix of canopy trees and understory trees.
Yeah. But the canopy trees are up at the 14-foot.
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
And I would say the 2 to 3 inch, that's a pretty large spread. Normally our tree sizing is in half-inch increments. Is there a
And-
reason, Bill, that you went for that a full inch?
No, but we're pleased to agree to 2.5 to 3.
Yeah.
And I don't know, Brian, the owner, Brian, if you want to add anything.
No, look, recognizing how we ended up where we did is, we're willing to accommodate. But I want to make sure that we're taking, I hadn't taken into account, for the plead naivete, I didn't know that a larger tree would grow slower, for instance. So I defer, Bill, to you, but I'm willing to accept whatever the staff and the commission feels is necessary here.
What would be the best way of, now this is for Bill, the best way of encouraging optimum growth by the trees, the smaller trees placed on the property? Bill, can you answer that?
To encourage the growth, it's really,
What I'm looking to, what I'm thinking about is there anything that we could add to the special conditions that would ensure that the trees are properly cared for? Like, I'm not questioning Mr. Finkel, but suppose the property moves on to somebody else. Is there something there that we could put into the special conditions that would ensure the continued health of the new trees?
right. In addition, so we have our details on the drawing. It's a critical to install them properly, so that if they certainly should follow the drawing, which would include these details for planting. And then beyond that, it would be the watering, particularly the first growing season, and making sure that they are regularly watered.
And I guess to that end, I'm not clear on and would love some guidance on whether the expectation would be that we would plant during construction or if we would plant subsequent to receipt of certificate of occupancy. Because we won't have an irrigation system and other things in place until we live there next year.
There are in the conditions. Let's see.
I thought the condition said that by June 30th, we had to have them
Yeah,
installed,
that's
which
because that's pretty typical with violations, that timeline. But this is new information on, you won't have an irrigation system installed.
well, right now there's just a hole in the ground. We're at least 14 months away from living on the property.
There might be other options other than an irrigation system.
Yeah,
Maybe Bill
certainly.
can speak to those with like the bags. I think they're water bags that go on the trees and other such, so they'll keep them going perfectly
true.
fine.
Yes.
So I'd recommend we keep the timing in place as long as some activity is not going to potentially, cause damage to the trees that are being planted. I recommend we keep the timing in place.
Most of the proposed planted trees will be behind a silt fence that's already erected. But the trees in question on the eastern edge in the middle of the property would be freestanding and next to right now what are large piles of earth.
Though, will that have the impact on the trees?
So perhaps you install 80% or 90% of install the trees that are beyond the silt fence, which I think is going to be more than 90% of the planting that's proposed.
So
And-
if I may, one of my recommendations was that the demarcation be extended in that area. So ideally, it would be protected in that sense. The silt fence would then be on the other side of that demarcation. And I don't believe, once the pool house is constructed, there should really be much going on that area.
There's no expectation that we'll construct the pool house anytime soon.
Right.
nor frankly at the pool, but that's a separate discussion. Turns out inflation hurts building houses. But no, in all seriousness, we're happy to accommodate a revision of the silt fence. I just want to make sure that we're not doing this and having to do it again because we have trucks and things coming through. I'm mindful of long-term health, and I want to get it right. And if there's ways around that, again, I'll plead ignorance to a certain extent, and I'm happy to take the direction of others. But I want to just make sure that we're not putting newly planted trees at risk. That's all.
Bill, am I correct with the newly planted trees? Obviously, their root system is confined. It's not like an established tree whose roots have spread out. So the compacting of roots is actually more of a risk for any remaining trees. The new trees, not so much.
Right. So that you don't have the concerns that you would have, like you said, with existing trees. It actually works out quite well. The roots aren't going to grow much beyond a few feet beyond the tree that first season.
Okay, so then it sounds like we're pretty safe sticking to the planting plan that was required for the violation, the timing.
Right. There might be just the one tree that bumps out closer to the pool house, but the vast majority of the planting is behind what was approved.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it seems like we're in safe territory. Jay, we do have another audience member who has her hand raised if the board's done.
Is there anyone else who wishes to comment on this application?
Hi, yes, can you hear me? It's Vanessa Curry. We own 84 Meadow Road, which and our property is on the boundary that is shown where it says property boundary across the end of, exactly, yes. So we own, I don't know that I have a concern on anything that has been specifically talked about, but I am a bit dismayed in some ways, just that I'm just interested in what penalty there was for taking down these mature trees, because I know that when we bought the property, which really wasn't very long ago, it was only 18 months ago, we were fully aware that the wetlands were in the back part of the property, and actually they're so mature that actually that specific house on Grosset Road almost looked like just a house within trees. So I just find it interesting, I suppose, that that many trees were taken down by accident, and I'm just interested in who is culpable for that, because I think the loss of habitat and environment relating to the wetlands and the habitats of the critters therein is just a great shame, really, because it does abut the wetlands that's on our property, and actually that's a great feature of that land for me, and actually that habitat has essentially been erased.
Thank you. If I may, Jay, there are limitations to fines that the agency can impose, statutory limitations. Jen, a fine was issued on this?
Yes, and also municipal fine was also issued, if you recall, and that was paid by the tree company. So there were two. We don't always do the two fines, and there were two fines for this one.
Right.
Also,
sorry.
I was going to say it's also worth noting that Davis has thus far footed the cost of the application for the reapproval and will be footing the cost of the entirety of the revised planting plan.
Good for you.
Well, I say that now, but
Okay, I don't see any other hands raised in the audience.
One other comment. There was a mention made of changing it to 2.5 to 3 from 2 to 3. Should we go with that?
Yeah, I think that's where I'm falling out, 2.5 to 3. Falling in, falling out. That's I agree,
Yeah.
2.5 to 3.
Yeah, that is one size increment above what we normally require.
I didn't catch where we ended up with the Jen's recommendation for the extension of the demarcation feature. It sounded like that was going to interfere with the construction of the future, I shouldn't say potential, with the future pool house. Did I catch that correctly or not?
It shouldn't.
And can I ask for a clarification with regard to that? And I can wait until you guys are done speaking if you want, but that question raised a thought in my mind.
Jen, do you
Go
want
ahead,
to describe? You've got control of the screen.
Go ahead. Bill.
Can you, can everyone see the screen?
Yes.
Okay, so this area here, you know, Pat and I were speaking and we just felt it was it would definitely benefit the plantings there if it was further extended. We were happy with this extension on the northern, but really the majority of the plantings that were taken down were here. So to better protect it, I believe that a demarcation feature should be extended this way as well.
Sounds good.
My question was, actually, I think Jen may have just answered it, that you do see there was that one outlier tree that is further into the yard. And I was envisioning that the demarcation would be just outside the shrub line that's proposed there. And that one tree would be in the lawn area. And that just wanted to make sure that that was consistent with what you had in mind. So the one tree would be in the lawn, but all the other plantings would be behind the demarcation feature.
I mean, that sounds reasonable to me.
Same. I think that's where you were drawing it tentatively when I saw so that sounds pretty reasonable to me. Catch all the understory and the two big native shades, but that one outside makes sense.
Jen, would it be appropriate to add a special condition to the effect that the restoration plan would be implemented in accordance with professional standards for maintenance of newly planted trees, something like that? Because it's really, I get the neighbor's concern.
Yeah, we can certainly add a condition for that. And it is a concern because it was all of those trees, and the neighbors are probably very aware of this. All of those trees were scheduled to be protected with their active permit. So we can certainly add a condition for that as well.
Thank you.
I mean, to some degree though, isn't that, I mean, that's, you put the plantings and you have to protect them for X amount of, we check on that too, just to be clear. It's not like people just plant and then forget. So if they're going in June, part of the conditions is they're going to survive. So
I had assumed that was what the bond was for.
Yeah, the bond
Right,
is, yeah, we do have a condition for that. If we want a bit more of a specific condition for it, we can craft one. But we always have that condition for the bond release time. So, within 2 years, 80% thriving at that point, we are rechecking.
Thanks.
Okay, so in addition to changing the caliper on those trees, should we put in that the demarcation would extend along the shrub line? I don't know which direction is which right
So
there.
it would go to the easternmost dogwood and then turn south to wrap around the southernmost shrub.
Yes, I do have that in condition 1, but I can specify it a bit more in that, and then also specify the 2.5 to 3 inch caliper as well.
Mr. Hoffman is looking to make another comment.
I had more of a question, I suppose. When I think about this from a layman's point of view, we're talking about I think, hundreds of cubic feet of canopy volume being reduced to tens. And I don't know what's feasible with regard to the size of the trees. I know we're talking about a half-inch increase here. I know that other neighbors of ours have put in 25-foot tall trees with maybe 6-inch diameter. I understand if you can't rip a 100-foot tree out and put it in as it was, probably wouldn't survive, and that's very costly and such. But how does the committee think about the health of the wetlands when you're talking about such a drastic reduction in volume? How is that volume adequate for remediation? And at some point, there was a mention of the growth rates kind of catching up, so that they are, after 10 years, approximately equivalent. But 10 years is a long time, critter time and human time, to get to that point. So I just want to reemphasize the point of, like, we would hope that the committee would do everything it has jurisdiction to do to restore that area as much as feasible to what it was before the violation occurred. And I'm not understanding how the half-inch caliper is sufficient for that.
Bill, did you want to respond?
It's certainly, there isn't an equivalent to the mature trees that were present there, but the agency has established the standards, and so at this point we're providing something that exceeds the standard. But I think the agency has something else in mind, we're willing to consider that. And Brian can jump in if you'd like.
So you were going to look up the difference in height from the different
Yes.
age or size classes?
So if you go from, so right now we're at 2.5 to 3. If you go from 3 to 3.5, you basically get another foot in height. So maybe you're around 15. And if you went from 3.5 to 4, you're around 16.
But you had also mentioned that the transplant on a tree that size is also, the survival rate, or maybe the stress on the tree limits its success over time. Is that an accurate statement you made? Or I don't mean to say it like that, but did I interpret that accurately?
Yes, I just found one article regarding that. And I can certainly send that to you guys, but and it's going to vary from species to species. And I know in general that's the case, and I don't know individual species that well to be more specific than that.
And I'll say that is consistent with my dealings with the tree sizes, that yes, you do use the larger the size, the slower the acclimation, and you definitely do have enhanced care to ensure that they do take properly. Which is not to say, I mean, I've seen 6-inch caliper trees be planted, so it's not that it's not feasible, but it's not. And I would even say that the catch up between the 2.5-inch to a 3.5-inch caliper tree is more in the order of 3 to 5 years. And I think the 10 years that Bill was referencing would be the disparity between those, even the larger trees, and a 2.5-inch caliper.
Enhanced care is really thought to be regular effective watering. That's it. Is there anything else? Are there any other factors that contribute to enhanced care as we're using it tonight?
That early in the life of the tree, after it's been transplanted, it is, I think, the care with the installation. But for that first year, water is going to be the primary, getting the right moisture conditions, water conditions. In my experience, that
And can you parse out, like a routine for these trees or a minimum amount of water that they would need for enhanced growth? Is that possible to do?
yes, we could provide something. At the moment, I can't provide more detail on that, but we certainly can provide that for staff to review if you'd like to refine, if you want to. I don't know if it's possible to refine your condition or
Norma,
write-
would you be more comfortable if we had a monitoring protocol where an arborist visits the property once a month to ensure that things appear to be taken care of, the trees are not showing signs of stress, so that we capture any problems earlier rather than 2 years after planting?
That sounds good.
Okay. Jen, that would be a modification to a condition or a whole new condition?
That would be a whole new condition. Typically, we have something like that.
Okay, so monthly monitoring by an arborist for the first year, and then every 2 months through the growing season of the second year?
So can we issue an order, Pat, and add to the special conditions, or must it wait until the special conditions are formulated?
No, I would suggest that the conditions of the order that Jen has proposed, with the changes that the tree size be increased to 2.5 to 3 inch caliper, that monitoring take place once a month for the growing season of the first year, then bi-monthly for the growing season of the second year, and that the demarcation be extended from the easternmost proposed dogwood turning south to capture all of the shrub line along the eastern property boundary. Am I missing anything, Jen? Members?
No, I think you
No,
got
that's
it.
all my notes.
Okay.
Then I would recommend we issue an order to correct with the special conditions as modified by Pat. Anyone wish to make that recommendation?
Yeah, so moved.
Anyone opposed? I don't see any indications. That passes 500. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Next on the agenda, 2022-031, 14 Baldwin Farms South.
The applicant has requested this application be continued.
So be it. Next one would be 2022-032, 77 Rockwood Lane, J. Fain and Associates LLC for Kelly Chance corrective action for unauthorized removal of trees and shrubs in and adjacent to wetlands.
We're back to Jen.
Okay, so this one was, the staff reviewer was Doreen. The owners recently purchased the property in 2021 and began renovating the home and property prior to taking residency. Mold was found present in the home. An environmental remediation company was hired to remove the mold and recommends to repair the site drainage and removal of and pruning of the overgrown vegetation on the property, as these were likely contributors to the growth of the mold. The engineering company hired to perform the work retained a soil scientist to investigate the property for the presence of wetlands, and none were found. As a result, tree work and removal of vegetation occurred, including within the wetland at the front of the property between the circular driveway and the road. The activities were observed by wetland staff and determined to be a violation based on previous permits issued on the site and prior wetland soil delineations conducted by Bruce Lasky and Jay Fain. The vegetation removed within the wetland had been installed as mitigation for work completed under those prior permit approvals. The property owners have provided a letter dated March 29, 2022, explaining the situation that led to the violation and their intention to correct it. They have requested the agency waive the violation portion of the application fee. The proposed native restoration planting plan provides 2 shade trees, 6 understory trees, 35 shrubs, and 35 ferns. This proposal replaces the vegetation that previously existed in the wetland. The plantings have been sized appropriately in accordance to our mitigation planting plan. An estimate for the cost of the plantings was submitted with the application material. The reestablishment of the native vegetation will restore the quality of the wetland, and an issuance of an order is recommended with the special conditions.
Jay Fain is here to represent the applicant, and I believe the applicant is here as well.
Correct. For the record, Jay Fain from Jay Fain Associates. I think Jen through Doreen, or Doreen through Jen, I guess it's better, has pretty much laid out the situation very well. The owners are very sorry for the violation. It was, I don't think anybody ever does a violation on purpose, but this one was truly inadvertent. And they've taken all actions to rectify the situation. In some ways, I guess there's some fortunate aspects of it, because these are old mitigation plantings, and some of them were highly over mature, especially the river birches, and they were in bad shape. And if you know river birches, they're multi-stem trees, and they were splitting and falling apart. So in some ways, we get to rejuvenate the planting as it should be. These type of plantings have to be rejuvenated over time. But the owners are prepared to move forward with the plantings as soon as possible to rectify the situation. They do ask that you consider, because of the circumstances, if we could just pay the normal application fee, not the triple fee for the fines. They have undergone a lot of financial hardship. When they bought this house, they didn't understand the extent of the mold contamination. There's hundreds of thousands of dollars of costs that they've had to place into that. So any consideration would be greatly appreciated. They are on the line tonight if you would like to hear from them. If not, I'd be happy to move forward. We are in agreement with all conditions.
Ms. DeShantz, I believe, is panelist.
Yes, I'm here. I don't have anything further to add to what Jason said, other than that we're truly sorry and it was an honest misstep.
I have a bit of a question for Jay. How unusual is it for someone to not find the wetlands?
Not that, I guess, you're probably asking the wrong person. You should probably ask your staff, because everybody have a lot more experience with it. I just had another situation today where someone got a report from another soil scientist saying there is no wetlands on a particular piece of property, which I know wasn't true. So it's not, I don't think it's that unusual. I always tell the owners, when people ask me to do due diligence for property purchases, that not to rely on just on the soil scientist report. Always go back to the wetland files, and most of them fortunately are online now, so they're easy to access. But I think the first stop is always in the agency office to do the inquiry rather than with the soil scientist.
Okay.
So am I summarizing this correct, Jen? There was information the homeowner had which indicated there were no wetlands on site, tree clearing occurred. Then
They hired another soil scientist, and I did include the report, and and that was on the recommendation of the professional engineer. They said, well, if you have a soil scientist report, you shouldn't have to get a wetland permit, and there's nothing to worry about. And of course, the correct answer should have been always get a green sheet sign off so you protect it. But they moved forward on that basis, and which was unfortunate because now they find themselves in the situation they are in. But it was totally an innocent mistake.
Sound correct? They relied on professional report that turned out to be wrong.
Yes, so they did hire, as they said, the engineering company who retained the soil scientists, and it was inaccurate. Yeah.
Okay.
Well, how do the agency members feel?
How much money are we talking about?
I think the application fee was $1,500 or that, or the basic application fee is around $1,500, and it was tripled because of the violations to about $3,000. I think is what we're talking about. It's not an insignificant amount of money.
Peter?
Yeah. Talking fines. I mean, we just heard from two adjacent property owners on another property that had a violation, saying, where's the accountability for this? Where are the fines? You know, I don't know if there's anyone from the public that's going to comment on this, but it's a pretty big removal of woody material. I can relate to the homeowner in respect to asking, because they did pay for, certified scientists, wetlands or soil scientists to come and, take a look. But I feel like, the blame ultimately in a way lies with them. Negligence is a pretty strong word, but there's an inventory of wetlands. It's very easy to find on the town website. We have a wetland agency. It's pretty common knowledge. Anyhow, I think we have the ability as an agency to not enforce the full fine, but alter it a bit, maybe not waive it in full, right? So we could do something along the lines of maybe twice the application fee instead of 3 times. Would be my opinion on that one.
Is there any way we can get the soil scientists to go and put up some of that fine?
We cannot. That would be something that the property owner would take up with their professional.
Well, I mean, I have a lot of sympathy on when they're relying on professional help and they make mistakes. On the other one that we had earlier, I guess the people that by mistake removed those trees, I guess they are stepping up and they're paying for some of this now. And I think here that if the same thing would occur, then we could put in the whole fine. But if the homeowner who's relying on professional advice and it's wrong, I do have a bunch of sympathy. I mean, I'd go and reduce the fine to $1,000 or just the regular fine, the regular fee.
Did you say the regular application fee?
Yes, sir.
Just to be clear, it's 1,500, and then it was the 3 times. It's going to bump it up to 4,500
instead of 1,000.
Yeah, that would have been 4,500.
1,500. 1,500 regular application fee.
I'd be curious what other agency members think.
I think I might be going along with Klaus on this one. It's really not that, they hired an engineering firm. They hired someone who was supposedly knowledgeable, and he made a mistake. But I think that they were going in the right direction and got bad advice. It seems a little harsh to charge them for the other guy's mistake if they can't get back at him at all.
Do we have a copy of that other soils report documentation?
It was included with the application, and the other soil scientist is a reputable soil scientist. It was an honest mistake, but it's a mistake nonetheless.
Wouldn't you think, though, Jay, that they would have I'm sorry, it's kicked out of context the homeowner, but if they're a reputable soil scientist, they also would know general wetland regulations. Do they work in this area in the town of Greenwich?
I
Maybe
can't
this is getting
speak
a
to
little
that. I know how
but
I
mean,
operate.
I mean,
Yeah, and I just know that I have to go, on every property I work on, I always check the wetland files because the history is there and it's always important. And so I also know that some attorneys, closing attorneys in town don't do that. So, go figure. People do their business different ways.
All right.
I do think it is reasonable that a homeowner relied on a soil scientist.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I agree with that part. It is reasonable. It is case by case for us and the agency, right, on these. So it's not as if we're setting we're going to go ahead and waive it every time this situation arises.
A little bit different circumstances also because these are all mitigation plantings. So really, we're no more trees caught. It was a lesser type of impact situation.
Yeah, I'm not gonna, be the one to stand against it. The other agent, maybe Norma, did you have a thought on that one too? Is Norma still here?
Yeah.
Norma, you're muted.
My connection was lost. I'm dithering, but I think I'll go with the flow.
Well, I like to go with the flow too then. So if it's three against one there, it's okay. I'm all right with not. So my second question then would be to Jay, when you mentioned the river birch, is that really, I was surprised. What did you say? Expectancy? I mean, how old is that planting? And is there something else you could plant that for this plan that would have a longer
substituted
life?
another. I think we spotted the dogwoods. The river birches were 20 plus years old. I think we did the planting in 2003. I think that's about as all you're going to get out of those plants. They multi-stem, so they tend to split, and they're also very soft wood. And when the snow and everything comes on, they bend them over.
Yeah, I caught that part, Jay. I'm sorry to interrupt you, but you have already replaced those in the plan. They're not going back in.
No.
With dogwoods, which have a life expectancy of what in this area?
40, 50 years, I guess, depending on whether, trees around here are taking it really on the chin. Every day there's a new disease for a tree, but understory dogwood tree, you would typically figure 30 to 50 years, I think.
Okay. Thanks for clarifying. And my last question on this one then too is that, was it a 1-to-1 replacement?
Yeah, it's a very small area and it's a very tight area. And I think this is the appropriate balance of vegetation for the site. We would be really stuffing it if we put much more in there.
Okay.
Again, it's almost like after a certain amount of time, these plants get over mature and you have to start thinking about replacing them anyways. And we're just about getting to that stage on a lot of these plants.
Yeah, I caught that part. Okay. And agency was aware it was a 1-to-1. So, I mean, staff. So I'm okay with it if it fits the footprint better.
It's, no further comment.
Yeah.
All right. So when I issue an order with the special conditions and reduce the fine just to the normal fine.
The application fee.
The application fee will be just the normal fee and not tripled.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Peter. Anyone opposed?
Nope.
Okay, 500.
Thank you so much. The owners really appreciate it. Have a great evening.
Thank you.
Next on the agenda, 2022-033-54 Pexland Road.
The record should reflect that members Schondorf, Curlin, and Rimmer were at the site.
S.E. Minor and Company for Barry and Jacqueline Goslin demolish cottage and construct pool house, and drainage system 12 feet from wetlands.
I'll take, this one's mine. I'll give Jen a break for a little bit. So the closest activity to the on-site wetland is the cottage demolition, which is 12 feet away. There is an existing boulder demarcation that serves as a barrier, but soil and erosion control should be installed to protect the wetland. Demolition seems straightforward and should result in no immediate or long-term impacts to the wetland, provided the silt fencing separates the work zone from the wetlands. The rest of the proposed development, the new pool, the pool house, the pool fence, drainage, and loggia will take place outside of the upland review area, except for the northeast corner of the new pool house and drainage, which are in the wetland, which are in the upland review area of the wetland and pond to the east. So it's in the center lower port, yeah, right where Jen's cursor is. Thanks, Jen. There is a channel that's labeled drainage from below that outlets northeast of the existing pool, and it needs to be confirmed which needs to be confirmed as to not meeting the criteria for a watercourse. During a site inspection, it was noted there are defined bed. There's a defined bed and bank, evidence of scour, and the flow persisted longer than a particular storm event. As observed during a previous field inspection under Order 2019-004, this channel was originally supposed to be a level spreader, but was installed as a rock line drainage corridor and acts as an outlet for pumped water. The source of water will be key to determine the jurisdictional status of this waterway. This particular drainage channel drains directly to the offsite wetland and pond to the east. This channel is proposed to receive untreated drainage from the pool patio, and it will be hot in summer months, contributing to thermal pollution of the pond. The applicant should speak to means to reduce or eliminate this source of pollution. We're also looking for the applicant to provide a description of what the existing source of water is, if piped from elsewhere, and where those pipes and what the ramifications of non-compliance order from 2019 are. An explanation of the capacity of the channel and how the added volume from the pool patio will be accommodated would be helpful. There were plantings that were previously proposed in association with the 2019 order that do not appear to have ever been installed in this specific area. The new development will include a new level spreader and drainage outlet, all within proximity to the drainage corridor. Installing the 2019 plantings in response to the development associated with this new proposal will be of value to protect the slope stability with the introduction of the new discharge points. And lastly, the site plans should be updated to include the exposed rock ledge surrounding the pool and pool house. And if any trees are to be removed from either the construction of the pool house or piping for the level spreader, the location of the silt fence should be revised as it conflicts with the ledge. So a tree save-a plan should be provided as well. So we've prepared special conditions of approval to the agency to consider in the event that the applicant satisfactorily responds to the points raised above and any other issues the agency might express.
Hi, good evening, everybody. Larry Lieben from SE Minor. Can you hear me all?
Larry.
Okay. Thank you, Sarah. I want you to know that I spent the better part of the day today trying to ascertain where that water comes from, and it's just as a mystery to us as it is to you all. I even spent some time with the former applicant of this or the former applicant's agent, Mr. Conti, who did the plan beforehand, and he said that he thought that it may be from the pump that was inside the wetland. DPW has also requested that we find out where all of this water originates, and we intend to start dye testing as early as we're allowed to, so that this way then we can do it. As far as the erosion controls in the trees, we plan on increasing the erosion controls as requested and delineating which trees may be slated for removal. And as with regard to the plantings that were never installed, They will, seems to be a trend. They will be installed as part of this application, without a doubt. And if the agency sees fit that we can allow DPW to handle where the water is going, and then we have no objection to what's written in the staff report. If the agency wants to know where the water is coming from and how it is, then we understand the delay.
I will opine that finding out that water source is important, as it has the potential to change locations or cold techs or.
So be it. Thank you.
Okay.
Then I pray for a delay, please.
Wow, prayer.
Was the appearance of the water when it was observed?
It was, visibly clear, running. It wasn't surging like it was coming from.
Right, that's
a
the
sump
part
pump.
that's the part that was getting to me. If it was a pump chamber, it would stop at some point, and we stood there for a long time waiting to see if it stopped, and it didn't stop. So I don't know if something else is connected. It could be a footing drain that's making all of this water. It's very possible. Okay, so it's also quite difficult to send the camera up moving water. So we're going, well, it's hard. We can do it. It's difficult, but I would prefer to drop stuff in known locations, drop dye in known locations. So this is also then be noticed that I'll be using orange dye so that if the pond turns orange, we know that we found it.
Yeah, good. Could you let us know the days you're testing so that we can be prepared?
Not a problem.
Thank you.
Not a problem. Thank you.
Larry, in what you were talking about too, sounds like we're going to delay. So, but the drainage off the northeast pool and the thermal pollution, you laid everything out really nicely. I'm sorry if I missed it, but how were you addressing that?
The thermal pollution will probably take this stuff and put a Coltech in before. Well, it is going into Coltex and then going. It's not a direct discharge. So I believe that the Coltex would handle.
No, it looks like it's due to discharge to that level spreader.
Right. So if it's in the level spreader, then it's we'll add an additional Coltech off of the patio.
You put it down into the ground.
So this way, then it'll get into the ground first. Yes.
Thank you.
With an overflow. Thank you.
Yep.
Okay, Jay?
Yeah, there were, when we were walking around, there's some grates in the various lawns that don't seem to discharge to anything. Adjacent to near the pool, there was a grate, but we couldn't see any pipes going from it. We didn't know what it might have been for. And there was one other item. There's a wetland near the cottage which is being removed.
Yes.
I would say about a third of that, at least a third of that wetland area, which is crosshatched on the drawing, was nice green lawn grass. And it's my understanding that that area was supposed to be of a product that would be mowed once a year. And that doesn't seems like the lawn has just extended itself in there.
Well, we will look at that and we will overseed that or put some other type of vegetation in there and make it into a meadow.
Thank you.
That can only be mowed twice a year.
Okay.
Or when I talk with the applicant may want us to plant that out. So we'll see. That'll be for next month.
Okay.
Okay. So we'll continue this to our May meeting.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Continue. 2022-034, 22 Oak Drive. Rizzoli Planning and Engineering for the Boone Living Trust, construct patio, spa, retaining walls and drainage systems 12 feet from wetlands.
Agency members Schondorf, Rimmer, and Curlin were at this site.
This one's also me. Is anyone from the applicant here tonight to share any new maps that they, Margie?
Yep, Margie Bart.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, I'm Margie Bart. I'm the landscape architect for the project. And I believe we have the team for Rizzoli here as well. So they should be joining soon too.
Okay. Margie, I made you a is it Ben Graviano?
Yes, Ben and Jose. And I'm going to share my screen because we updated some of our maps. So, okay, so here's the project, 22 Oak Drive, and we received your comments on Friday. So we went ahead and made the changes as quickly as possible, and I'm going to take you through them. But just a quick overview, as you know, this house is built up fairly high in, compared to the surrounding landscape. There's no real space for, spilling out off of the terrace, off of the covered porch for the family. It slopes down severely, an artificial slope that was, filled, obviously, down to the wetland buffer line. And there's some hydrangeas and plants that are kind of failing on this slope. And then it's obviously maintained lawn kind of closer to the buffer line here. So kind of an unsuccessful planting on this slope. And we're proposing some items for the family, such as a small patio, an outdoor kitchen, and the spa. And then, we step down here to a small lawn area. There's an existing Coltec that services the entire house that we have to protect and maintain through this project. Here we're proposing to add native wetland loving plants. So things like Ilex glabra, maybe some native viburnums, witch hazel here along the slope. So really replanting that, getting rid of the lawn. And then of course we will add, you had all requested the demarcation buffer, which we would add, I've indicated that with a red line here. So we will add boulders or the fence. I'll have to talk with the applicant to see which they would prefer. And then beyond that, inside the buffer, we're proposing more native planting. So here, we think it would be really beneficial for the wetland to have things like that understory layer again, Cereus canadensis, more Ilex, viburnum, hamamelis, all along the buffer, which is, it's lacking that now. And then as far as the drainage comments, and Rizzoli may want to jump in, Ben and Jose, but we've moved the level spreader outside of the buffer per your request here. And I believe that was, and then I think they also, the engineers also kind of cleaned up some of the piping, the pipes here. I think there were some questions about that. So some of the, they cleaned up their drawing. So I think that covers most of the comments. If I'm missing anything, are there any questions?
Can I jump into my staff report? And we did get the plans and a letter this afternoon. So I did go through what was proposed in the staff report and the changes. I just want to run through what I picked up on. And thank you very much, Margie, for that explanation. So originally proposed, this terrace went out and it expanded 856 square feet, and it pushed the development within 35 feet of the wetlands. It seems like the retaining wall has not moved. It seems like it's in the same place. If I'm wrong, please correct me, but it doesn't look like that location has changed. We had requested an alternative that showed the retaining wall that went with the natural slope of the backyard, the existing slope already. So we didn't see that. The Coltec system has been, is in the same place, but the level spreader has been shifted in. And are there alternatives for that location of the, thank you. Yes, so the larger Coltec, yeah, that looks like it's in the same position. The level spreader has been brought outside 35-foot buffer, but are there other locations for the Coltec system that could be brought in closer to the stairs or the retaining wall, and the level spreader again brought farther away from the wetland?
I'm sure we could look into that. I'm not sure if the engineers dug test holes right here, but we could definitely look into moving it to the west. So kind of getting it further away from the buffer. We would be happy to check that out.
It was also mentioned in the letter that an alternative using a rain garden, if the Coltec system and level spreader were not favorable to the agency.
We are definitely open to a rain garden, whatever everyone would prefer. This was the first design, but a rain garden's okay too. With the rain garden, it would also have to be outside of the buffer. Yes, I'm seeing yes. Okay.
It should be, unless there's reason that it can't be.
Yeah, I mean, I think we could, you know, maybe squeeze one in here. This is kind of a natural low point, but that again, we would have to do, I'm assuming, soil testing to see. So you guys just let us know what you would prefer.
Also, the reason for keeping the rain garden out is because that buffer should have been planted anyway. And,
right.
And you did include a plan that showed mention of wetland. Yes, that's this one that just showed species, but we like to see a more comprehensive planting plan, locations and quantities.
We would be happy to share that with you as soon as it's prepared, so that, you know, we would share that, of course.
So I can jump in, Margie, if you'd like.
Yeah.
Ben Graviano with Rizzoli Planning and Engineering. We did do a level of testing to the west of where the current Coltec proposed location is. However, there's some really large mature trees in that area, and we did not want to compromise the root systems of those trees. One of the reasons we tucked it into that corner where it's currently being proposed. And then also with respect to not shifting the retaining wall, so there's obviously a very unnatural slope occurring, a large mound. And based on the design that Margie prepared, the top of the wall, or the wall itself, would be located at the bottom of the unnatural slope, and not necessarily the natural grade as it projects to the east past that slope.
You could see the bottom of the fill area when they built this house is about here. So we were actually taking our wall behind, you know, where the original development was. This is the existing generator. So we're pushing everything.
Slope really, the toe slope lines up pretty cleanly with the back of that generator.
So we're keeping everything behind that generator here.
Yeah, I think the idea was to have the retaining wall at the top of the slope. instead of giving up, what this is doing is there is planting on the slope. I don't disagree that it needs some assistance, but the plan here is actually giving up that area of vegetation in exchange for a wall and lawn. So that's less desirable. It'd be better to have the wall sit where the edge of the lawn is. And
Let me just see, hold on. So we would be adding quite a bit of planting up above on top of the wall here. And, you know, like right now, there's quite a bit of lawn down here. So they're actually gaining a lot more planting with this plan.
And you're also planting areas that were once being maintained. So they were
Right,
cutting that slope, and now would be left, for argument's sake, undisturbed with these plantings.
And also we are trying to designate a spot for people so they don't go near the wetland. So, you know, the wall is acting as another, you know, mark for people to stay out of that area. Whereas now, you know, people are maintaining this, the kids are down here. This kind of,
they should be, yeah.
They,
Get the
yeah,
kids
well,
off the lawn, yeah.
Yeah, so, and they, it gives them a pathway, the circulation out and away from this, you know, the wetland area.
And I have
And
to
also,
point out,
I wanted to add that we have to maintain the integrity of the Coltec here. So getting, you know, getting this wall in without compromising the Coltec, this is the approximate location. You know, we're trying to find a balance between that existing drainage system, and the, you know, where the actual fill for this home took place.
What is the separating distance needed for a Coltec and a retaining wall?
Well, we will have to have the structural engineer finalize the details for the walls, but this footing could go back 4 feet, plus they need another, you know, room to dig.
So it would be helpful to get moving
Sure.
on
What I can do
what
is
it actually
send,
is versus what we're worried
Yeah.
about.
So what I could do is prepare the detail for that and send it over.
Pat, is this where we saw the ranunculus?
Yes.
That's serious. That is an invasive that is extremely difficult to control, if not impossible. So I'd like to hear a little bit about how you intend to deal with it.
Well, we could look into that and see, get some recommendations to you about how it could be removed successfully.
You know the plant that I'm talking about?
Well, I'm not aware of the location.
Well, it's also called fig buttercup, and that would give you a clue. If you look down and toward the wetlands, you'll see that it is all over the place, and it won't go away. It's very, very difficult to control. So I'd like attention paid to that.
You mentioned the Coltec being, could you go back to the other site plan? The proposed location that you have for the Coltec would appear like it is within the drip line for that mature tree that's just to the right of it. Whereas you were saying you wanted to protect the trees, it wasn't a good spot moving it up, shifting it up and left because there were other trees there, but there's clearly a large tree right there as well. So if this could be relooked at and we could get some alternatives for location or a rain garden instead of.
Yeah, rain garden instead of, I'd like to see the plans for a rain garden. And I would think the benefits to the wetland are more significant than a Coltec unit.
RJ, I think you would agree when we would say that our client wouldn't be opposed to for us to design a rain garden for them.
I
If
don't
that's
think
the
we would be
underlying issue here and we can avoid a delay and just handle this with staff, we could come in with a plan for a rain garden in the very near future that I think would satisfy or resolve or alleviate most of your concerns.
Well, the retaining wall that Pat was talking about and other people were talking about seems up in the air too.
Well, again, I mean, this retaining wall is in an area that's already been disturbed. You know, there's a very unnatural slope there. And in our discussions with staff in the beginning of this project, the staff member we were dealing with felt that that would be a very good barrier to protect the wetland, to
Yeah,
keep
I
the
actually-
activity on the upper portion of the property and prevent any kind of possible disturbance to the wetland.
Right. I actually designed this with going to your, I went to your agency early in the design process, and this was looked at really favorably. This wall location.
Yeah, I
Pat,
don't
did you
think
have a comment?
anybody, I'm certainly not debating the value of the wall.
Right.
The location, yes.
Right. And we were asking for some information, just maybe I missed that, Pat. We were asking for information on what was it? The wall in respect to the Caltech units that's there, and
Right.
we
It
needed
was
some more
speculated
information.
that the
Yeah, so
separating distance, but we don't
would be
really know the
happy to
number.
provide that detail. That's no problem. We could get that to you soon.
Right.
Okay. Okay, so it looks like we have the outstanding items is the details associated with the planting plan, alternative or explanation with the location of the retaining wall, investigating moving the Caltech off the roots of these trees, and perhaps doing a rain garden instead. And a management plan for the ranunculus. Am I missing anything?
I have two.
Any other comments?
If anyone for the public wishes to speak, if you can raise your hand. I'm not seeing anybody, Jay.
No, so
Nope.
continue to next month.
We can, yep.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And next one is 24 Ridgebrook Road, 2022-035. Pat, this is committee continuation.
Yep, the applicant has, or the applicant's agent has requested this be continued.
So we move on to 2022-036, 0 King Street, Zoldi Engineering and Planning, LLC for 0 King Street LLC. Corrective action for unauthorized removal of vegetation in and adjacent to wetlands.
Okay, now we've got Jen, and I'm pulling up the agents.
Trying to screen share. I guess when it came off, it was hard to get it back on.
We'll be patient. Sorry, it's our first run.
Yeah, you know what? It's not. Okay. Can everyone see?
Yeah.
Yes, can you zoom in a bit?
Yeah, yeah.
Thank you.
Kind of kicked me off when we added that other one. All right, so this is Zero King. The total disturbance is 4.93 acres. Activity on this site began in an attempt to determine the extent of the wetlands and the invasive plant species on the property. However, vegetation was so densely overgrown, the property could not adequately be assessed. Agency staff authorized limited removal of the invasive species so that the survey work could proceed. However, the activity went beyond what was approved and a stop work order was issued in February 2022. At this time, the applicant is seeking approval to control the invasive species. The intent is to manually remove the invasive species and then treat with herbicides. The invasive management plan is expected to span 3 years. The agency may choose to expand to a period of 5 years. The applicant has not provided a plan indicating how the soil will be stabilized after and during the invasive management program. Also, there are invasive species located to the east of the stone wall, and it should be clarified whether the invasive management will continue in this area. Provided these questions are answered to the agency's satisfaction, and issuance of an order with the conditions provided below are recommended. I know Janet sent Doreen an email earlier, but she's prepared to kind of go over some of these questions to clarify it for us.
The same three agency members visited. Oh, I'm sorry. No, Jay Strundorf and Bob Rimmer visited this site.
Am I invited to speak at this point, or is this for agency members right now?
Does anyone on the agency wish to make any comments at this point?
No.
Go ahead, Janet.
I am Attorney Janet Brooks on behalf of Zero King Street LLC. I'm not certain whether commission members received my comments as well as the comments from Davison Environmental that we provided electronically on Friday. Can anyone confirm to me were they distributed?
No.
So I sent them over to both. I knew that Doreen was out, to both Doreen and Pat's attention, but so I can go over them briefly. These are our comments to Doreen's staff memo, because she was out early. She got the memo out early. She was out for a week. So I will just go through the, so we're happy with the proposed recommendations to approve the permit. And I just wanted to go through a few legal issues in this. And then I'll also invite Michael Klein to make his few comments on some of the environmental ecological issues. So I had, so really nobody, not even staff, has seen our written comments. Okay, so
sorry to interrupt. So I did receive these from Doreen just this afternoon, but what she had informed me was that you were prepared to present it. I did not receive it on Friday though.
Okay, right. I sent it to, right. I didn't know that Doreen was off our matter. Okay, so the staff memo uses almost interchangeably order and permit, sometimes order or permit. And I just wanted to sort of structure it that the order portion the LLC has taken care of, and that was all last month. And all of that documentation was turned in last month, although it wasn't on the agenda to be discussed. So that involved removal of the majority of the wood chip path. That occurred on March 5th and 6th. And there was a report from Davison Environmental that was submitted before March 25th of before the last meeting, text and photos documenting that. Also, at the February meeting, we were required to work with staff on sedimentation and erosion control measures to be put in place. That was on the Monday night. Between Tuesday and Thursday, Davison Environmental worked that out with Bob Clausey, and on March 5th and 6th, that was installed as required. And then the third item that we were required to do under the order was submit the application for the March 25th meeting, and that did occur. So what is outstanding is this permit. So I just went through all these, I saw in the staff memo all these references to orders with special permit, orders with special conditions, transfer of the order, notice to the new property owner of the order. And I think all of that meant for the permit, transfer of permit. And these are special conditions for a permit. So that's the first issue. Number two is there was a question about whether there was an establishment. Well, the staff was assuming that there's to be a meadow established, and we need to put this in and establish the meadow, and then certain things to occur to the meadow. However, what we're intending to do, first, we wanted to get this cleared, really have a lay of the land. The goal is an agricultural plan, a farm plan for the site. And as I wrote in my letter, which no one seems to have gotten, there are likely elements to this farm plan, just so you know what's it likely to be. It's likely to be an orchard in the upland, a wildflower meadow in both the wetlands and the upland. And that's to promote the pollinators for the orchard and for honey production. And the proposal will likely include a barn directly related to the farming activities in the upland. But we're not seeking that now, because that's we're going to present that as a agricultural exemption at some point in the future, when we really have a clear sense of what things look like and what seems to work out. So we don't wish to have any meadow established at this point as a regulated activity under this permit. So
I'm just going to interrupt just a second to say that the agency members here, I have forwarded the email from Ms. Brooks, so you've got this document to follow along.
Okay, so one was so my issue number one was basically, I think if we understood it as permit and permit conditions, then we're all on the same page. And number two is no meadow at this point, because we're not applying for a meadow as a regulated activity. We're going to look at a more complete farm application, and that will come in for determination for exemption at some point in the future, once the invasives are under control and we have a lay of the land. So the third issue is the filing of the declaration of regulated areas on the land record. And I bring this up because I did environmental enforcement at the Attorney General's office for 18 years. And we were very attentive to not putting anything on the land records for which we didn't have statutory authorization. And so I'm basically starting at the first step is that I don't see any statutory authorization for such a declaration of regulated areas. And I did have a discussion with Pat earlier today. So that is, I could go into great detail about this business of statutory authorization, but perhaps I don't need to do that right now. Let me just finish making my little arguments and claims, and then perhaps Pat would like to say something. Then the other issue about the request for a declaration of regulated areas, I have some concern about the use of the phrase regulated areas, which does not occur in the Wetlands Act. And perhaps a softening of this, calling it of wetlands and watercourses. I'm concerned that if there's anything on the land records that says regulated areas, that everyone, including future wetlands agencies, will think they regulate wetlands. And in fact, it's only certain activities, and specifically because we want to be coming in with a farm plan, something that we believe we will be able to persuade the agency falls within the exemption. We don't want there to be this construction that regulated areas trump other things. And so I have a concern about the use of the phrase regulated areas. And also the 2006 revisions to the DEP model regulations have removed the definition of regulated area, have removed all that, and have replaced it globally with wetlands and watercourses. I guess my argument is twofold. One is that there isn't the statutory authorization, but if you are going to require something, that it be to a declaration about wetlands and watercourses, and not set it up so that exemptions are excluded from what would be allowed in the future. And at this point, I would actually turn to Michael Klein for his comments, tweaking various parts of the staff comments. But I don't mean to suggest that we're unhappy with the idea of approval of the permit. So either if Pat, you think it's appropriate to speak at this point, or if I have Michael Klein just make his comments, however you wish to proceed.
Why don't we deal with the declaration? I don't disagree with what Janet is saying about the emphasis by DEP on activities rather than areas. During our discussions today, we reviewed the purpose of our declaration, and that is that future landowners have an understanding that they need to come to us when working in and adjacent to wetlands and watercourses. My specific concern is if, following along the legal argument that the declaration has language that speaks to activities, we are going to lose the efficacy of the document, that the layperson reading it is no longer going to get the guidance that we are seeking this declaration to serve. I would not have problems refining the language so that it's regulated areas. And then Janet, you had spoken of adding language, tweaking it so that it speaks to exemptions and other things so that your client can not feel that this board is going to come down beyond their jurisdiction. I'm sure that fits in with the intent of the agency, which is to have on the land records so that in the title search, it is discoverable that there are wetlands, there are watercourses, there are regulated areas associated with the upland review area, and come talk to us. So I think if we have agreement with that's the intent that we need to maintain, that based on our conversation today, I think that we can get to a place where your client's concerns can be addressed and the intent of the document can be maintained.
So perhaps I could submit draft language for your consideration. We could come to agreement as to.
Yes, so if the agency is comfortable going forward with Sarah's recommendation for approval, based on this discussion, if they feel comfortable that you and I are on the same page as they are, then that could be something they could authorize us to work with our town council and pursue those tweaks.
Okay, then at this point, I would ask Michael Klein to address the comments he made in his letter, which was also submitted around, it was part of the package of things I sent up around noon on Friday.
Good evening. This is Michael Klein. I'm a biologist and a soil scientist, but I'm also apparently the owner of a video camera that doesn't feel like responding. So no disrespect to the agency. I can't get my camera on, but I hope if someone could raise their hand and let me know that you can hear me.
We can hear you.
Oh, okay. Awesome. Okay. So yeah, as Janet said, we don't have any argument with the intent of the approval, obviously, but also we don't really have an argument with the intent of the special conditions. There's just some clarifications and some tweaking that we are suggesting and that I've suggested in my letter. With respect to the first condition about final plans indicating how the soil will be stabilized. Erosion controls are already in place on the site. They're shown on this drawing. They've been inspected by Bob Clausey before he left. We all miss him. He thought that we got an email from him saying that he thought they had been done at least as good as, and I'm paraphrasing, at least as good as he would have expected. The impression I got after talking to him and from reading the email was he thought we did an excellent job on that. And I'm not surprised. Matt Davidson from our office was there in the field to supervise the work. The erosion controls are shown on this drawing. Most importantly, there's a final check dam at the exit where water flows off this property. So it controls anything and prevents any issues from going downstream. But you know, this site in general, and the commission may remember from when we were here a couple of months ago, there's not a high risk of erosion here. The land is almost dead flat. The water course that's shown on there has so little pitch that there's lots of places where it's really even hard to define the water course. The flow just sort of spreads out. And finally, because the overstory has been largely removed, certainly the shrub and vine layer has been removed, we expect that, but the duff layer was left in place. We expect that will stabilize the soils, and B, that the vegetation is going to sprout here like gangbusters now that there's so much sun getting to the property. We're perfectly happy to add a note to the plan saying that an erosion control conservation mix would be applied in any areas that don't regenerate naturally or as directed by staff. We just don't think that an entire new erosion sediment control plan is necessary. And I think that's pretty much the next bullet talks about the bond, which we have no problem with. The next condition talks about installing erosion sediment controls prior to any work starting or May 5th, whichever is sooner. And again, we've got the controls are already in place on the site. We will certainly plan on and have no problem with a specification that the measures are to remain in place and functional until the site's been stabilized. The final vegetation for this area, the permanent vegetation mix, will be specified, as Janet mentioned, in a forthcoming request for an agricultural exemption for this property. But we suspect it will consist of fruit and nut orchards in the areas where that's appropriate from the standpoint of the soil conditions, and a native pollinator meadow in other areas that won't support the trees. The order, the next condition has to do with the order, and Janet's already talked to you about that. The next order, or the next condition, talks about consultant to be available to submit status reports on a weekly basis during the, and I presume that means during the initial invasive management effort, and then to move to twice a year for the remaining 3-year grow-in period. We would just suggest that there may be, there likely will be some periods of time, some substantial periods of time, even during the first year, when there'll be no invasive control activity. And so we think that weekly reports are only necessary during the first initial phase when the active work is going on. During the following years, when there is just spot treatment, we think that twice a year is perfectly acceptable, and perhaps that's what the intention of this condition was. It was just a little bit hard for me to determine, and I just wanted to make sure we're on the same page. With bond release, once the intention of the plan has been achieved and the site is stable, we think we should be able to apply for bond release. We'd be happy to have a condition that an inspection with staff occur and determine that the intent of the plan has been achieved and the site is stable. And at that point, we could apply for bond release. I just want to emphasize here that the intent of the plan is not eradication because of invasives, because eradication just isn't a feasible goal. It's not an appropriate goal. Even with things like insect control and integrated pest management, we don't try to get 100% eradication. We try and get it down to a level where the native, in this case, the native vegetation is dominant, and the other invasives are not stable or shrinking in coverage. So we certainly would be happy with making sure that everyone is that the bond release is conditioned upon that kind of an approach. The next condition, as I read it, this is talking about the areas to be maintained as meadow, assuming that that's what the final plan is, that they be mowed no more than once a year in the late winter. When I first read this through, I thought that we were required to mow it once a year. And so my comment perhaps is not, is maybe not apropos if the intention here was to, that it could be mowed less frequently. The bigger concern, I think, is that late winter, if anyone was out to the site several weeks ago, you can't get in there and mow the wetland areas on this property where likely some of the meadow vegetation will be established in late winter. We think the appropriate time from a biological standpoint is in late summer or early fall, when the ground is driest, the water table is lowest, and also after the ground nesting bird season is over. And in fact, we would suggest that it needs to be mowed no more often than every other year, biennial, not biannual, but it could be even every third or fourth year. And then the next to the last condition talks about notifying staff of problems, including downstream siltation. The downstream end of our property, as you can see from the plan, the lower, maybe if it just move that up a little bit, but you know, it flows off under the road and actually into New York State, and we don't have the ability to go onto those properties to evaluate siltation that may occur downstream. We're certainly happy to, if you could modify the language slightly to just say that we'll notify staff of any, in the event of observing any problems that might result in erosion or sedimentation that has a potential impact either on-site or off-site. And then whoever has the authority to go in and examine those areas can do that, and we'll figure out how to deal with it. But I'm a little bit cautious about a condition that could be interpreted as requiring me to go onto a piece of property that I don't have the ability to access.
I don't think that's a worry. That's not what this is suggesting. I think we're getting some split and some hairs here.
Okay. We just want to we don't want to be arguing about this later. And that's,
I gotta say, and I've never had an argument where I have required somebody to go onto somebody else's property.
Okay. I'm glad to hear that, Pat. And, just as an aside, there are some commissions that believe that they have the authority to require me to do that. And so I'm sensitive to that, but
this is not one of them.
Great. Then we don't have any issue there. So, they're minor details, I think, just some little bit of language tweaks, and we would be perfectly comfortable with the conditions here.
I'll run through some of this stuff. So the purpose of the mowing in the late winter is because we have a lot of insects that overwinter in the stalks. So that's something we've been focusing on, keeping that habitat intact. There is nothing that says we can't, if a meadow is even established, because we're taking a new direction here tonight. Given the specifics of the property, wet, if it's dry, that can be worked on. But generally, if it's frozen, that's a good time to mow, late winter, because you get those ground nesters, and you get to help overwinter some insects. The bond, that is a standard requirement. I gotta say, the idea that you're gonna cut this stuff, treat the stalks, and then let the native stuff come in is not at all reflective of my experience with managing invasive species infestations. You have got a seed bed in there that is just ready to jump forth. It takes years to get properties like this one under control. So the intent here was you're going to clear this site of the invasives, which is exposing a lot of soil. Normally, I would see a cover crop of some sort go down that will protect the soil while the few years of kicking back those invasive species goes on. And you can, do a tall mow. You can do the mow to benefit warm season or cool seasons, or things that only grow 6 inches tall, whatever the focus is. But you're going to be mowing in here, and there's no two ways about the fact that these invasives are going to be part of a multi-year effort. So us holding the bond for 3 years, those are just the first 3 years. You're going to be working on the invasives management for longer than that. But the bond after 3 years gives you a pretty good head start, and it seems likely that more likely than not that you're on the way to achieving the goals. The other things, yes, the erosion controls are in. That's great. I wouldn't say that there's not. So the issue of erosion, yes, there is the potential for soil to be dislodged, move through that site, not in a gully sort of erosion pattern. But yes, water will flow over that site. So we have to be very specific about how we're going to keep that soil in place.
So Pat, just so I'm clear, are we, and I know we're presenting this for the agency as well, and that will be all part on voting on it, but for that condition as far as the erosion controls by May 5th, I did see the email exchange with Bob Clausey, and he saw it was satisfactory. Are we removing that condition and voting on this moving forward without it, or?
Yeah, so when we were out there Friday, yes, the erosion controls are in. I suspect as the project progresses, there's going to be some field modifications, which would be perfectly normal. But I would say, yes, that the issuance from the first cease and correct order to get this erosion controls out there has been satisfied.
All right. And then there was just one other question. Is that language for the declaration being finalized tonight, or that's something moving forward?
The agency will have to weigh in on their comfort level on that. And I agree with Janet with regards to an order versus a permit. Yeah, this is technically, and this is something we've talked about in the office, when something starts out as a violation, but then there's actually permitted work that comes out of it. Is it an order? Is it a permit? This is one of those that straddles that continuum of activities, but in fact, at this point, we are in a permit phase. rather than an order, because all of the things that came out of the initial order have been satisfied. And there's nothing left here to require.
Apparently, Pat, haven't been very clear, and I apologize. And it's in our report. We certainly understand and anticipate that it's going to take several years and multiple applications for this control program to be effective. And in fact, we did say that. I said multi-year follow-up is likely required. It's almost certainly going to be required for sure.
I'd put money on it.
Yeah. Oh, I would too. Maybe I was just being a little bit too defensive about making sure that I wasn't making a commitment that wasn't necessary. But we absolutely expect that this is going to take place over multi-years. The concern I really had was just, is there going to be a requirement for weekly reporting during times when we're not doing any work out there? But
now, my takeaway from the language that during the project means there's sort of your active engagement on site.
Okay, then absolutely. No, that was exactly what I was asking. So that obviates my concern in that regard.
Great.
Could I go back to the Pat? You wanted to keep the mowing in this late winter phase. I was out there late February, and it was difficult to walk. It was very muddy. So I'm the last person who should be bringing this up, but I'm still concerned about the ability of mowing equipment to go out there in late winter. And Michael, do you think that's just misplaced? I'm just concerned about equipment getting stuck.
Yeah, no, I don't think it's misplaced. I mean, I understand what Pat is saying, and this is a conundrum with respect to wetland sites, that equipment operation during the late winter is difficult, but it absolutely is the best time for allowing for certain insects to complete their life cycle. Given the how wet this site is, I think it'd be very difficult to mow it in late winter. Maybe we can get past that issue by observing the site with staff over the next months until it's ready, time to mow this thing, or a couple of years until it's time to mow it, and then come up with an appropriate time for then. We're happy to try and do it in the late winter, but I think you're going to get machinery stuck and it's going to be a problem.
It could very well be the case. So I have no problem with having a sort of a wait and see and finalize that parameter as site conditions as we spend the next few years with this place.
We appreciate that. And again, as I read it again, just before the meeting, it says, my initial read thought that we were required to mow it every year, but apparently that's not the case. So then I have no problem with that language that's in there. That was my bad.
Yeah, that condition is in there because people have a tendency to mow too often. So, once a month they're out mowing their meadow, and that's not the intent.
Yeah, I understand completely. When I read it over more carefully, I think first time I read this, it was on my phone because I was out of the office and just didn't catch that nuance.
Yeah, different audience.
I have a question for Mr. Klein.
Sure.
I've been looking at your report on page 4, where there's mention of chemical controls. Would you discuss that in more detail? I'm very nervous about the use of rodeo and the others, the effect on native species and the ground nesting species and the wetlands water flow, whether there are particular best management practices that you will apply to the use of these herbicides and other chemicals if that part of the plan goes forward. Can you just address that, please?
I can address it in some generalities. Is our intention to, and I think it's in the plan, to hire a contractor who specializes in this kind of work and has a commercial applicator's license. In general, rodeo is the aquatic formulation that's approved for use near waterways. Do
you mean deep approved or what approved?
It's approved by, well, I don't know the answer to that. It
So
is.
I'll tell you, I did pesticide enforcement when I was at the state. So it's federally registered and state registered pesticides as well. They're both dual registrations.
Okay. One of the advantages of doing the more aggressive mowing that happened here is that as we won't need to do large scale broadcast spraying. At least that's our hope, and that the spraying can be done with low volume backpack type sprayers and just hit the individual plants. That is an issue anytime you have such a heavy infestation of invasives. There's really no effective method for control of mile a minute that doesn't require chemical controls. As of now, there are there's a biocontrol agent that is available. It's only beginning to be used in the state. We're happy to investigate that further and see if we can develop a program that works for the state and works for the agency for mile a minute. But multiflora rose, honeysuckle, Asiatic bittersweet, there's just no biological controls available.
That would be the end of our presentation unless there are any further questions that agency or staff would have of us. Thank you.
Thank you. Any agency questions? Jay, did you want me to check on public yet?
Yeah, I guess the agency doesn't seem to have any questions, so let's try the public.
Any members of the public with questions? Can you raise your hand? Not seeing any, no. So the outstanding issue, so we've got Jen's report, which is recommending an order, which I think is more appropriate to be a permit. And the modifications would be to eliminate the erosion sedimentation requirement since that's already been completed. There's a request on the applicant's part to allow modification to the declaratory filing to encompass or better express the limitations as far as what regulated areas versus activities. The meadow mowing, we need some flexibility to determine what time of the year is best for mowing. The soil will be stabilized with conservation mix as needed. And I think that covers it. Jen, did you have anything else in your notes?
That first one, so the note added to the plan stating conservation erosion control seed mix will be applied any areas that do not regenerate naturally. Is that the last item that you discussed? So we are
Yes.
okay with the other areas being left as is.
What I'm gathering from the applicant is they're looking for natural vegetation or native rather. It's all natural. Native vegetation. I think that they're going to find a lot of native or non-native invasives springing forward. So Michael, if you had garlic mustard becomes your ground cover, or the ranunculus that we heard about in the previous application, that's not control of invasives. What is the intent for invasives at the herbaceous layer?
The invasives that are amenable to control without overall broadcast spraying, we're happy to try and control. We've identified what we've seen at the site. I mean, this is one of the issues with invasive management. It has to be adaptive because, something new could come in that we don't know about. There's really, the idea here is to, for example, take, Japanese stilt grass, which is naturalized throughout the state. It's just about impossible to control. It's an annual, it comes in, seeds blow in, whatever. So the intention here is to control invasives, not to eliminate them.
But as far as the ground cover goes, I'm still not clear. Are you expecting that the likes of jewelweed and other native ground covers are going to be dominant?
Yes.
So you don't need to do the conservation mix except for specific spots?
That would be our expectation. But I'm not going to let that issue
but what's
create
the
a
plan
problem.
if
I
you
think it's
don't
more
get
important
that?
to move forward quickly on this as the season, as the growing season starts. And if you feel more comfortable with using a conservation seed mix throughout as some kind of a nurse crop or whatever, we're happy to do that.
Yeah, I've only, my experience draws heavily on having a nurse crop that, unless the idea is to go through, let some seeds germinate, knock them back and exhaust that seed bed for.
That was our intention.
Okay, so for the first year or so, and Jen, I'm not as familiar with all the details of this plan, so forgive me if I'm asking questions that are already in the file. So that's laid out that you're gonna let things sprout, or even in the herbaceous layer, knock that back mechanically. Is that correct?
No, I'm sorry, I'm nodding and you can't see me.
I cannot.
No, the intention would be to knock it back with herbicide.
Even the herbaceous layer?
Yes, because the mile a minute is going to sprout and come up, and we want to hit it when it's small.
Yeah, to me, that's not the herbaceous layer. That's our line woody 40 layer. I'm talking about garlic, mustard, ranunculus, stilt grass, those actors.
That wouldn't have been my intention to hit those.
Okay.
But when the mile a minute is, and I don't want to get into a argument of distinction without a difference here. When the mile a minute is small, to me, that's, in the herbaceous layer, and that's when we're going to try and control it when it first sprouts.
Okay.
This year. I think that's an issue that with good, that some experience and adaptation will show us if the approach we've suggested is not being effective, we'll go to a conservation mix and treat through it.
Okay.
So perhaps we have something in the condition language that allows that opening, each year for whatever changes are needed.
Yeah, I think that's exactly what the intention of the report. And in fact, if you look at page 4 of my my report, which said inspections be conducted in spring and late summer to determine recommended practices moving forward. The report submitted to town staff on or before December 31. For the next 3 years or until substantial control has been achieved, the report will identify current extent of invasives and any adjustments to the recommended treatment plan. You've suggested a twice a year report, and I think that's fine. That's not a problem. But that was certainly the intention, that this was going to be a document that adapted to conditions.
So Pat, I think if you're okay with it, that first condition, once the agency weighs in, I think could be eliminated, and it's just that qualified environmental consultant condition is really what we're using there. I don't know how you feel about that.
That's fine. It's fine by me.
We're good.
Fine by Peter too.
Yeah, I think that's fine.
Okay, so that would be another modification. Jay, your balls in your court.
So it sounds like we're going to be issuing a permit with the special conditions as enumerated and as modified by the discussion, which staff will fill in.
Yes.
Is there anyone who wishes to propose this?
Can we just have a summary of the altered conditions?
Jen?
We're eliminating that first condition entirely. As we discussed it, the qualified environmental consulting condition kind of covers everything we need moving forward now. So that's eliminated. Keeping the $3,000 bond. We are removing the silt fencing condition because, as you've seen, it's up. So we don't really need a deadline for that. I'm not too clear on the declaration of regulated area condition quite yet. Is that something that's still something pending discussion? We're leaving the qualified, we're leaving everything else. And there's some flexibility for the mowing of the meadow area that's established. So we're going to show some flexibility in that condition. We just have to tweak the language there.
Thank you.
And the declaration is allowing staff and town council to work with the applicant to modify the language to incorporate things such as of right activities, and not to suggest an over extension of our jurisdiction.
Okay.
All right, well, I'll propose that we issue the permit and including the special conditions in the report and as modified at tonight's meeting. Is there a second?
Yeah, I'll second.
Thank you, Peter. Anyone opposed? Hearing none, 500. A permit is issued.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. We're coming to the end, Jay.
2022-037, 26 Cary Road, Chris Dodaro for Janet Ogilvy. Construct residential addition and drainage system 40 feet from wetlands.
This one's mine. So I'm gonna just have to promote some folks. Hang on, hang tight. Here's Matt. Anybody else from the team want to be promoted? Half our audience left. Chris, okay. Okay, so I've Chris and Matt. Anyone else?
That
Okay.
should be it.
Great. Okay, so this application, actually, members have been out here before. We've had two previous applications associated with this for redevelopment of the property. First one was denied, and then the second one was withdrawn. This is a new proposal back, and as stated in the staff report, the issues that were associated with the past applications have been largely resolved in this one. I specify certain documents that need to be incorporated into this record so that the record can be more complete. The revised western limit of the two-story structure is beyond the reach of the critical root zone. So that's probably the most significant change as far as our concerns of the application that was denied. That one was denied in part because the location of the structure and other activities associated with it were going to cut into the root structure of trees whose roots are generally moving east away from the water and the steep slope. So there was concern that too much of their roots would be impacted further. Their crown interfered with the proposed home, and significant trimming would have needed to take place. And with all of that, there was concern that the trees, in fact, would not survive. The drainage is going to be dealt with porous asphalt under the driveway, and this then eliminates the Coltech and other stormwater management features that had been previously proposed west of the house. There is a planting plan that will enhance the stability of the top of the slope and does move the limit of lawn eastward to the benefit of the pond. That's a plus. A demarcation is included, and the shed in this application will be removed, as the last time it was not to be removed. And generally things are kept in sheds, which could be fertilizers, petroleum products. So it's not the shed itself that is of the issue. It's normally the uses associated with sheds that can cause us some trouble. In the last application, we had a specific call out that invasive species on the slope leading down to the pond were going to be dealt with. This plan does not include that. I have provided special conditions for approval. I think the plan, as I said, meets all of the concerns that we had last go round. And I do want to check in the filing fee for this. I believe came in at less than what the filing fee should have been, and the agency needs to deal with that. I hope I'm not misremembering that. I'm sure somebody on the applicant's team will correct me. I think the application fee that was submitted was $1,500, $1,560 state fee. I can't find a sheet of paper that would confirm that for me. So if I've got that wrong, applicant team, please let me know. And if I've got it right, agency, we need to touch base on that. That's all I have.
Good evening, Matthew Pop, landscape architect, professional wetland scientist with Environmental Land Solutions. I'll be quick. We are in agreement with the conditions recommended in the staff report. And I think we're just here if there's any questions tonight from us. I think Pat summed it up pretty well.
Is the intent to take care of native invasive species on that slope?
I would have to go out there and take a closer look. I would just be cautious, being it's a steep slope down to the pond. I wouldn't want to take something out and then not have something replaced. So again, I think I would keep maybe the condition in, and then I'll just go out and take a closer look, and then I think we could revise the plan as needed.
Yep, I'm with you on the something is better than nothing, especially on stabilized slope. For some reason I want to say it might be knotweed and vines, greenbrier. maybe not knotweed, but I remember thinking, yeah, that stuff should go. But
Yeah.
I'm qualified, yes, on that is great.
So,
Any comments from the agency? Norma, Peter, Bob? No? Someone want to make an,
Oh, did,
Just the
can you tell me what
fee.
the fee, we do need to touch base on that.
I think you're right on that, Pat.
Okay. And what,
It didn't match up for when we met in the office with Peter Tessie, we went over it. And I remember that. And so I wanted to double check, and we called in. I can't remember the staff member that spoke with. And they thought for sure that the fee we submitted was right, but I didn't think, and I just figured we'd work it out afterwards.
I think what it comes down to is this is described as an addition, but it's not an addition, it's a house.
Yeah.
I think that's where the difference comes in.
I think you're exactly right on that. So yeah, not an issue though. Well, we'll take care of whatever we need to do on that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Perfect. So then the only changes to the special conditions would be to add something that the invasive species will be evaluated on the slope and addressed as appropriate, considering soil stabilization issues, and that the remainder of the fee will be submitted.
correct.
okay, so I'll make a motion to approve the application with the modification to the special conditions regarding invasive species evaluation on the slope and adjustment to the fee.
Second.
Thank you, Klaus. Anyone opposed? Okay, at long last, this lot can be on its way.
Thanks so much for your support and assistance, and the staff was just superbly, greatly appreciated. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. Appreciate those comments.
Good night.
Good night.
Night.
15 Surrey Drive, 2022-038. Pat, you said there's a continuance on this one?
That was the email that we received, but I do see an Erin in the audience. Erin, can you indicate if you are here for 15 Surrey Drive? Yes, looks like maybe she is. Okay, Erin, I've promoted you to panelist. Erin.
Hello.
Hi.
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 Just 1 second. Sorry. I'm just having some Zoom things. Hi.
No worries.
Sorry.
Yeah,
I'm
so
not.
we were told that you were not going to be able to meet tonight. So
Oh,
glad
no.
to see you.
Yeah, I'm out of town right now, but I got Wi-Fi. Sorry, I'm out of town. I'm on a volunteering thing. So I had no notice of the hearing. I called today, this afternoon, and I spoke with Doreen shortly, and she just told me I probably should be at the hearing. So I try to make time. Sorry if I'm kind of a mess. It's been a long day. Yeah, but thank you. I begged the people here for Wi-Fi, and they let me have it. So.
Oh, terrific. It'd
Yeah.
be great if we can move this forward.
Yeah.
Jen?
The only
So we're going to
thing-
just have Jen introduce the application. And
Yeah,
I'll say
hi,
that Mem Schundorf, Curlin, and Rimmer have been to the site.
Okay.
Go
All
ahead,
right,
Jen.
so the original stop work was in July of 2021. The tops of the trees along the brook behind the residence of 15 Surrey Drive have been cut off, and fill was being spread in the side yard north of the house. The existing stone wall had been slightly raised and top joints mortared or capped. Neighbors, so we did receive an explanation from Erin that neighbors repeatedly expressed concern in writing regarding the hazardous state of the trees. The owner was unable to incur the expense, but eventually conceded to have the trees topped as recommended by an arborist who stated they may regrow over time. The installation of 3 to 4 native understory trees will benefit the pond and wetland by providing shade cover and further stabilize the soil. The stone wall along the pond is dry laid. The top layer of the stones were recently mortared or capped, and the narrative states that over time, the original stones fell off the wall and into the pond. The mortar layer was intended to stabilize the wall to keep it in place. It may benefit the wetlands and reduce the potential for flooding issues if the raised mortared stones were removed and reset to loose laid stone. The narrative states that the soil scientist verbally communicated to the homeowner's daughter that Erin, that the 4 inches of fill was located along the lawn side of the stone wall. The applicant is seeking to maintain the existing soil level since it is about the same elevation it was prior to the removal of the weed roots to minimize disturbance and erosion. Written confirmation should be obtained to confirm the 4 inches of less of soil being placed along the stone wall. We did confirm that information with Scott Marucci and with DPW as far as his response being that it is in a FEMA zone, in a flood zone, and if it is actually under 4 inches or under, it would be up to wetlands to either have a professional engineer hired or to maintain it, since it is not too much of a significance, that height of fill. So issuance of the order, as long as the agency sees fit with all of the special conditions that we've provided.
Erin, have you been able to get confirmation from the soil scientist in writing about the depth of fill?
So everything Jen just said is kind of new to me. I only got this information now, so I can get confirmation from Otto, who's Otto Teal, the soil scientist, if that's what's necessary. I can call him tomorrow and ask him to get something written by the end of the week if he's not busy. Yeah. I know when I spoke with Bob, I think Bob and Doreen, originally I was working with them. It sounded like they were going to call him, but I know Doreen's no longer working on the application, but I can definitely get it in writing. Yeah.
Okay.
Doreen also mentioned that there was some that I guess Jen put together a report. I didn't get a copy of that, but that would be helpful, so then I can address everything that you need me to. Yeah.
Sure.
Okay.
Okay, sounds like we'll. Jay, continue to next month?
Yeah. So this will be continued.
Okay.
All right. Thank you, Erin, for making the time to.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, thank you so much. Good night.
Good night.
Okay, bye.
And we seem to have one more here, 2022-041 West Brother Drive Bridge.
Yes, so this one, let's see. Let me just call up. Jonathan Ives. Okay, so this one is unusual and not in the plan itself, but how we're going to be handling this administratively. We have provisions within our regulations that allow us either at the staff level or at the agency level to issue emergency permits. The state of Connecticut statutes they require the agency to receive an application and then in no less than 14 days make a decision. Unfortunately, when you're hit with an emergency situation, holding over 14 days, and for us it's a month because we don't meet every 2 weeks, that can present some problems. So you'll see that this application is on our agenda twice tonight. So I guess we should technically receive it first and then act on it. I have put it on as an emergency application for review. And the process that goes along with that is that the agency can review this, issue a temporary permit, which allows the applicant to get going, get this process moving forward. And then at our next meeting, the agency it would be a consent item that we would go and issue a proper permit. So that satisfies the emergency issues with the temporary permit, and then we come back and satisfy our statutory obligations with the final permit. Things like this are frequently dealt with at the staff level, and then the agency has the opportunity to make any changes that they feel are warranted. So far, we haven't had any of those, but that's certainly within the capacity for the capabilities of the agency to do so. So why is this an emergency? Why did I pop it in to an emergency? This bridge was overwhelmed with Ida, and since that time, it has been shut down to vehicle traffic. And this is a main connection between the two sides of the Millbrook neighborhood. And then there's also utilities that are still hanging off of this bridge. So it seemed prudent to get this going sooner rather than later, as one cannot predict when the next storm is going to come that is going to overwhelm this bridge and make things worse. Presently, the abutments to the bridge are in good shape. And it's just the decking that is not meeting standards. And again, if this bridge were subject to yet another flood, we could lose not just the decking, but compromise the abutments too. So the sooner this gets repaired, the better. As I said, only the decking needs to be replaced, and the application shows that there will be netting or screening under the decking when that's removed to catch any debris. Sedimentation erosion controls are in place for the length of the linear length of the project. So those things are not of concern. Let's see. There are no changes with the hydraulics of the bridge. I confirmed with DPW the open guide rails associated with the bridge, just as it does now. If the capacity of the bridge of passing water under it exceeds, then the water just goes over it. So that will not change. And modifying this to pass bigger storms would greatly increase the scope of the project, and it just would change the way the water passes, but nothing more than that. There were no construction notes or sedimentation erosion control notes. The main staging area is in a floodway and floodplain, so it'd be helpful if that could be realigned. Let's see, the construction notes should call for soil decompaction of the areas and the means to stabilize it. There are trees in the immediate work area. The question if any of these will interfere with the bridge reconstruction, machinery movement. Will they require trimming or actual removal? There's a 12-inch tree immediately east of the staging area, and how will that tree be protected? Question whether its roots would be compacted. The catch basins in the roadways are to be protected with geotextile fabric or staked hay bales. Given that this area is already paved, those two means of protecting the catch basins are not likely to be successful, and a insert should be used in the catch basins instead. The anti-tracking pad is only 20 feet deep. The standard is 50 feet. This may prove inadequate, and we might have to modify things in the field. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense to push the staging area further back so that you can get the requisite length of anti-tracking pad, but we do have to be cognizant of tracking just the same. So that will be an infield consideration how to modify that. Jonathan Ives is here this evening. Hopefully we can square away these things, and if the agency is amenable, get it moving.
Thanks, Pat. That was a good summary. I'll just address some of the comments. Our final plans will have stage construction and erosion control notes. Earlier today, I looked at plans for another bridge that was recently constructed in town. I believe that was Riversville Road. And forgive me as I struggle with Zoom here. Once I became a participant, seems like I'm unable to.
What is it you're trying to do?
Access the rest of my. Oh, I want to exit full screen. There we go.
Yeah. Jen, can you zoom in on our map a bit?
So I looked at the Riversville Road bridge plans, which are just a few years old and must have gone through this committee, maybe with former members. So I see in their notes for sedimentation and erosion control, some of the key things were that they identified a person on the contractor staff would be responsible for implementing and maintaining erosion and sediment control measures. They specified clean out periods for the catch basin debris catchments, and they required the contractor to have additional materials on hand to reestablish any damage control measures. So we'll certainly update and provide notes requiring all of those things. For the main staging area, this is a difficult matter for the Millbrook Association because this is really the only open lot that they have, this park area, which is adjacent to the brook. So I don't see another area within Millbrook where this could be moved. We would note on the plans that hazardous materials, fuels, and such could not be stored on site, and that anything that was could float during a flood would have to be stored above, say, a 2-year flood elevation. This is anticipated to be just a 2-month replacement project. For the anti-tracking pad, the difficulty was the size of the site and not making the whole site into a giant gravel pad. And then the thought is that it's basically just a temporary lay down area for a very small job. So the girders are only, say, about 35 feet long. So we don't need an awful lot of room there. So I think that staging area is of adequate size. I would pull the fence and the eastern edge of the staging area away from the watercourse so that 12-inch tree would not be impacted. We'd be outside of the, forget the term, but
the critical root zone?
Impact the roots there.
Yeah.
Let's see. And then I don't know if the tree that's adjacent to the bridge would be of concern there. Yeah, exactly. But the only work would be done in the roadway there, and there'd be a little bit of excavation at the abutment to remove the existing bridge and rebuild the bridge seat, which is kind of unavoidable. If the root zone was impacted, we could use a decompaction. We do have a spec from job at the University of Connecticut that would be appropriate for that. I think that, let's see what the use, I don't know if this agency has a preferred decompaction method, but our
We do.
is for a supersonic air tool.
We go by the standards of either Virginia or New York.
Okay. I can get those. I agree with the comments about the catch basin. So we'll use an internal catchment that will be cleaned, and we'll specify the cleaning on the plans. And our intent is to incorporate all of your comments. We don't have any objection to any of them.
Okay, great. So ENS, so the condition for the comment.
And we'll resubmit plans with the comments addressed.
Okay.
I guess the one thing that is the difficulty with the staging area. Just there not being another area on, within the community that they have available for a
And
lane.
it's going to be, what's in the staging area?
It would be some additional parking for contractor vehicles. It would be a place to set the steel beams while we're waiting.
So not things that are going to float away in the event of a flood.
Right.
Okay.
If there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Jay?
Okay, so we're issuing a temporary permit on this one, Pat?
Yes. And so it looks just like our regular permit, except it says temporary.
So I would propose that the agency issue a temporary permit for the construction of the West Brothers Bridge pending receipt of the final document information.
Sure. The conditions provided by staff.
And in accordance with the conditions provided by staff.
And Mr. Ives' testimony.
And testimony today.
Very good.
Do we have a second?
Yeah, I could second that.
Thank you, Peter. Anyone opposed? Okay, that's great. Millbrook can get going from our
Thank you very
perspective.
much. I appreciate the accelerated review. Okay. Have a good night.
Good night. Thank you.
Thank you.
So we are done with tonight's work. Now we have applications to be received from 2022-041 through 2022-050. Anybody approve those?
I'm sorry, do we typically approve those?
Yep, you have to make a motion to receive those.
So moved. Motion to receive applications. Outlined by Jay. I'm sorry, I'm getting a little tired. Motion to approve the motion to receive the applications that Jay just read off.
I'll second that.
Oh, thank you, Jay.
Oh, thank you, Jay.
Anyone opposed to that?
Excellent.
So now we have some agent approval permits, 2022-023, 30 Hunt Terrace.
Yeah, you can just say, is there any questions on this? I do have a question for you guys, though. In your package, did you normally get the staff report for the agent approvals? Well, I'm going to say if you did, you didn't read them. I'm going to throw that out there. Norma, do you remember? We had this discussion today in the office. So I'm gonna say that you did not, because I think you would
I'm
have
under the-
noticed.
Pretty sure
Yeah, we would have noticed. I don't think we
Okay.
did.
Good. You're not gonna get them in the future either.
we have 023, 025, 027, 028, and 040.
Okay.
Thanks.
And violations.
Nada.
None.
Okay.
Are we dismissed, Jay?
Pat, are we done?
With no further business, I
on.
think the acting chair can call it.
Meeting is adjourned.
Thank you all.
Thanks, Jay. Nice to see everyone.
Okay.
Bye.
Take care.
Right.
Night all.